to Transformation with Martine. Martine Emmons is a transformational life coach who broke free from childhood abuse, sexual trauma, and overcame cancer to become a powerful force of healing and hope for others. Martine describes traumatic events as fierce emotional tsunamis. They can leave impending doom and destructive tidal waves of emotions that hit you when you least expect it. Martine helps her clients dive into the depths of their trauma and pain as she stands fiercely advocating for them to shine a light on those experiences and find the lesson in the pain. She serves as a beacon of hope that guides you to see the strength, lessons, and purpose that can be born from the pain. You can feel alive with purpose again when you awaken your dormant strength, step into your power with a sense of peace, and discover a new wave of hope with the right tools and support. Martine and her guests are here shining their lights today through empowering stories of hardship and transformation to inspire you to find hope and to see that there is a beautiful blue ocean of serenity, happiness, and fulfillment in your future. Transformation with Martine starts now.
Everyone, welcome back to my show. For those of you that are new, this is Transformation with Martine, where we overcome everything and compromise nothing. My show is every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and this show is about hope. The guests that I invite on my show is, well, they've all been through quite an ordeal in their life, but they overcame it, they're thriving. And I want everybody to know that we as humans are resilient, and there is nothing you can't get back up from. I am proof. My guest today is proof. And for more information about this podcast, to be a guest and or my coaching services, www.martineemmons.com, MartineEmmons.com. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome my guest, Dollie Duke, who wrote a book, it is a bestseller already that just launched, and it is pretty darn amazing. I am not done, but almost there. Please introduce yourself a little bit better and tell us about you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. This is amazing.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it. And yeah, the book just launched on the 11th. So January 11th, gosh, it's like, so time is so weird right now. So 1/1/1, that's my launch date. And it's funny, my publisher chose that, but that was actually the launch date I wanted as well, because my birthday is 1/1 and like January 1st, and number 1 is a power number. And so, we were kind of aligning the cosmos for the launch of the book as well. So, I worked on it for a 7-year period, and, things take the time they take. And when you're writing a book, like I just wrote, you can't really rush, the process of self-inquiry and examination and catharsis and healing. And it's been quite the journey, quite the journey. And Iona in Encinitas, California, and San Diego, Iona yoga studio and education platform. And we host a lot of writing workshops as well, because really the foundation of yoga is built upon self-inquiry and the existential question, who am I, what am I, and pondering our life's experiences, and writing ultimately ended up just kind of being an evolution of my yoga process. And I currently live in Ojai, California, and teach yoga here as well, and wrote a lot of the book here. And it's been fun, fun. And it's also a lot, it's a lot, because there's so much coming in from every angle, and when you're writing something so personal to, receive all the different sorts of feedback, it's a lot,
Right. I started my book a while ago. I'm not sure when I'll finish it. Yeah. But I committed this year to do an anthology, at least do that and start getting part of it out. But it is a journey. Yeah. It's like you really got to go deep.
Yeah. And, that's the thing that's why writing is so healing, because I'm so glad I didn't put, the first piece of work out there, which was like 2015, because it really, it's your first draft is really just you telling yourself the story. It's not really an examined story or an examined life, And so like over the period of, 7 years, I was really forced to, dive in and deconstruct everything that happened to me, and also the characters who are in the story. And the characters are my family members, these are my caregivers, and also, some of the people that hurt me and let me down. And so as you can imagine, just having to look at those experiences, it's a lot. But when you're writing a book, it's like, and you're doing it over a long period of time, and you're taking it really seriously, it's like you have to zoom out and really examine everyone and investigate everyone from a more holistic perspective. And that was what I really did. And what I saw, like, it really humanized the characters, my family members. And I really had to see the multidimensionality of the characters and what the characters had been through, that they were basically just passing on to me. And so that was when I realized, like, oh my gosh, this is something, this is something that I want to put out there in the world, because this really is about generational trauma. It's about learned beliefs, and about those learned beliefs being passed on to me. And it's not even anyone's fault. This is just what we're all experiencing. But my own examination of it really helped me see the humanity in everyone. And it helped me forgive myself for the things I did, and understand my own patterns and behaviors, and also my parents.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more into your story, but yoga really is what changed your life, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I took a yoga class when I was in high school, and my teacher was Mrs. Olive, and I was the worst student ever, because at that time, I had so much happening inside of me, so much angst inside of me. I couldn't take it seriously. Like, not for 1 second could I be still with the things that were happening inside of me. And so that came out, I projected that by being the class clown, or by getting in trouble, or, I was kind of a troublemaker because I was misled, But after high school, I had this moment. I was like 19, and I took a yoga class, and it was really the first time that I could be with myself and kind of felt peaceful. And I realized I couldn't articulate it, but I was like, whoa, something's going on here, and I need to follow the thread of this. And that is really the catalyst that changed my life.
Yeah, I think there was something, I think this is when you were living with the Mormons, or your roommate said something like, God, that class was weird. And you're kind of like, no, I kind of relate to the weird.
Yeah,
I do too. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that you're bringing up kind of the first piece of the story, is that dichotomy of living with, those sort of people. And and that also is a big thing that I think helped me change my trajectory, is being exposed to people who are living such a different life than me. And I share that and reveal that earlier in the book with that boyfriend that I had, and really getting to witness being around a kind of quote unquote normal or healthy or more traditional kind of family structure. And so that was, part of that, like, yoga changed my life, but also I think a little earlier on, having the exposure to different types of people and people in my community that were living differently than me, that gave me, just having that exposure inspired me to at least recognize that there's hope. Like, oh, okay, this is what I'm used to, but it's not all like this. And maybe I can live like this, but I had to bridge the gap. And that was the yoga journey for me, and the writing journey for me.
Right. Yeah, I remember reading that part of, I think it was like a Thanksgiving situation.
Yeah.
And yours was rather wild, but then you went to your boyfriend's house, and they're asking you like, oh, so what was your holiday like? Oh, kind of like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like, wow, okay, there is something else. I understand that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think part of the hiding, like having to, for so long, I kind of hid the things that were going on inside my house. And And I think that's also why I, for so long, struggled with so much disease and toxicity and shame, because I was so ashamed of where I came from, and some of the things that I had done to protect these people. And when you're just a kid, all you want is to belong. And it was very clear that I was not like the other people and I didn't belong. And so in order to belong, I lied. And, I think that's also like that kind of, put a lot of holes in my infrastructure, like lying about my life for so long and being ashamed. And, part of the process of writing this book and sharing this story is that, shame recovery really is about sharing, sharing with other people and getting really honest with other people, and recognizing that we're all just going through the same thing, because some people have been like I said, the feedback, it's intense. And I have, I've had some friends and they're like, it's really hard for me to read this. Like, why would you want to share and recount these moments of your life? But like, these are really human moments. And a lot of people go through, sexual trauma, abuse, psychological abuse. And I think we need to be able to talk about it, because it's really the thread that connects us.
Yes.
Unless we stay silent about it, and then it's what isolates us.
Well, perfection, that's disconnecting. Vulnerability and sharing our stories is what connects. I think it's amazing. I talk about this with my clients quite a bit. It's like, the more you share your story and you find out, the more there are like you.
Yeah.
It is what heals. And, there's something you wrote, and I'm trying to think, abandoned by my only source of oxygen, my mom.
Yeah.
I remember feeling that way too,
Yeah.
because nothing was done to protect me or to stop things from happening. And I look back now, it's like, what would she have done? She didn't know what to do. She wasn't as strong as me in some ways,
Yeah.
So how did that feel to you? Like, because a mom, especially a father, of course, too, is really supposed to be there to protect her kids. How at that time did you feel about that?
Well, it was interesting, because I think that feeling, all any of us want is to, like, our most primal kind of base need as animals, even before human beings, is to be cared for and loved and taken care of. Because if you're an animal in the wild and you're not cared for and you're not loved and you're ousted from, the tribe or the family, you risk death. And so when you feel uncared for, or you feel unloved, that ends up almost becoming, like that was like my baseline, I am not lovable. And that is a lot. I mean, mostly every person on planet Earth, the core wound is, I am not lovable and I am not good enough. And because I felt unlovable and not good enough, I put myself in a lot of precarious situations. And I think that this book gets more into, if you're really, looking at it at a deeper level, like some of our social constructs. And for me, I wasn't like a traditional ideal girl. I didn't come from money. I wasn't educated. And neither were my family members. And it's almost like I wasn't protected by my culture either, or protected by my community. And feeling unloved and acting in ways that reflect that, I got myself into a lot of trouble, and I put myself in a lot of situations that then ended up reinforcing how crappy I felt about myself. So that's what that does. When you are not cared for by your primary, like we need that primary attunement from someone, and I didn't have it. And so it's like, I didn't have a compass, and so I was literally just like shooting arrows in the dark, trying to find anyone or anything that would pay attention to me, or, confirm my existence in the world, because I didn't have that by my caregiver. And, that ended up like shattering my self-esteem and my self-confidence. And a lot of my actions in my teenage years and in my 20s were based on this false narrative that I had about myself, that I wasn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so damaging. Like, not being cared for by your caregiver is really damaging. You know, we spend the rest of our lives putting ourselves back together.
That's absolutely, absolutely true. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk more about your story and how you started to heal.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Transformation with Martine, where we overcome everything and compromise nothing. My guest today is Dollie Duke, and we have been talking about her book called Shithouse.
Oh, yeah. You can say it. Right.
We can say it. I wasn't sure. I checked.
Okay.
So I just want to make a comment, just because I know we talked about this a little bit, but the more I read into your book, it's like, God, it blows my mind how, as a young person, you were out there at Moss Beach Distillery, where it's haunted and all this. And I've been there, and I've been to that restaurant and kind of gotten a taste of the haunted per se. We won't go into that, but I have. And I just find it, because I got remarried in 2012 in Half Moon Bay. So I just think, God, it's a small world, isn't it?
Well, and it's so fascinating too. Like, I could have never imagined, so many people from my hometown. I mean, I'm just having so many blasts from the past right now. People just reaching out to me left and right, because I don't think anyone from up there has really ever written a book. And to see so many iconic kind of coastside and California landmarks, in the book, I think is really fun for people. But I also think that people are reading it almost like searching for clues to themselves, because it's not really just about, it's about Pacifica and Half Moon Bay and kind of the, small coastside zone, but it's really also about anywhere small town USA, growing up in a small town and some of the things that happen to us, as a result of just growing up in a small town and being bored and getting into trouble. And so I think a lot of people can, relate to the deviance and the being a nuisance and the drugs and the, just getting in trouble. And so it's been very fascinating to witness and entertain and engage these conversations with so many people that I grew up with, who were like, wow, we were all kind of feeling the same thing, but none of us knew how to talk about it. A lot of us were experiencing the same thing, and you're finally just putting it on paper. Thank you so much. Again, it's like, wow, you're confirming my experience and making me realize that I didn't just make that up, and that I'm not alone in this.
Right. That's the thing. It's that connection and sharing our stories. It permits you writing this book, permits others to share their story as well.
Yeah. And I mean that it is like our willingness, to our healing really does depend on our own willingness to dig deep inside and yank out the truth and share it with people. I was just saying last night, it's like, for most of us, there's this scene in the book, and I had this boyfriend, and the boyfriend went away to Haines, Alaska, and didn't take me. And it triggered my deepest, I am not good enough, I've been abandoned wound. And he asked me to stay and watch his weed plants. Do you remember this part? I
do.
Okay. And so there's this scene, and I basically am driven crazy. I'm throwing his plants off the deck, and there's something, I don't even know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I break all the stuff in his room and throw his drums around. And afterwards I'm standing in the middle of this disastrous pile, and I don't even know why I've done any of it. And that really was I think that was my first like all of my emotions and the things that had happened to me and my traumas and my negativity and my rage, like all of it was displaced. And I had displaced it on, to this person and projected it, on all of the stuff in his room. And when I was standing there, and I didn't feel any better after this, obviously, it was very destructive, not just for the physical environment, but for me. But I was standing there, and I think that was like in the middle of this like shit house basically. And I, that was kind of my first moment of realization. I was like 23 years old, and I'm like, oh my gosh, too much is happening inside of me and I don't even understand it. I'm like a shaken up snow globe, and all the stuff swirling around me are all my life experiences that are disorganized, and I need to find coherence. And so that was like also a big motivating factor for, my yoga path, which ultimately ended up putting me on the writing path, was really just to understand myself and to understand the things that had happened to me, make sense of my, of my own life. So I wasn't living in this disorganized, chaotic reality where I wasn't even in the driver's seat of my own life.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. That's very, that's something I've done a lot of work around, not only my own, but helping other people with, you need to be the one that's you need to be in that driver's seat of your own life, of course. Right.
Well, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. But we sometimes either don't feel worthy enough or don't feel like we have it in us to take charge of our own life.
Well, and that is why the main message of the book really is examine your life. That is it. It is, sure, there's, lots of different themes in the book, but for me, like, that's what I really want people to take away from the book, is recognizing, that an examined life is like really a life worth living, really making meaning out of your experiences and understanding yourself on a deeper level, why you've done the things that you've done, being more compassionate to yourself and ultimately others, because that really was my whole, like the whole constellation of my journey with writing the book, is examining myself, examining all of the characters, and recognizing like we're all a little broken, and we've all done some things that we're not proud of. And mostly everything that we've learned, it's all learned behavior. It's all social constructs. And when you can see that, it's almost like there's no one to blame. I'm not mad at my parents anymore. I'm not, and it just feels so good to be, in that place where I'm not suffering anymore. And that is why people need to dig deep and, examine their own life and the things that have happened to them and the people who've played a role, because on the other side of that is forgiveness for not only you, but for all of these people who've played the part.
Right. And forgiveness and compassion for what they went through too.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that there was I was a paralegal in my corporate life before doing what I do now. And I remember I was really blessed to have a boss who we did meditation a lot. We did a lot of spiritual, metaphysical type work. And, we went to this fancy restaurant at lunch one time or whatever. He invited one of his friends, and he just asked me, his friend, he goes, have you forgiven the people in your life? Yeah. And I said, yeah, of course I did. And shaking my head like a no.
Yeah, I was like, whoa,
yeah, it's like, that was such a poignant part of my journey. Like, oh, okay. I thought I did, but I didn't. And that's when I had to really go in there and, look. One of the things I have on my website too is like, sometimes we get gifts wrapped in sandpaper.
Yeah.
And we have to open them up, and it's not pretty and it doesn't feel good.
Yes.
But
yeah,
it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I just wrote this thing down yesterday that that was kind of like my insight and my epiphany, but I was thinking that our human experiences and our grievances, they aren't our graves, but rather they are our gifts to give. And I mean, that everything that I have been through, I relate to people. Like I can hold anything,
Mm-hmm.
anyone can tell me anything and I can hold it and be in the space with someone and not be uncomfortable and really
Mm-hmm.
just be able to share space on, what it's like to be a human, because it's
Right.
incredibly joyous and effed up,
Yes,
and I think
that's
we
right.
need to be able to like hold the space for the whole complex, system that we're all feeling all the time
Mhm.
as human beings. And I think it's so interesting, my area of study is somatics. I did the somatic
Mhm.
experiencing training
Mhm.
and so it's so fascinating. Like the body is always telling the truth. And so if you're like,
Mhm.
yeah, I've done the work, but your head is shaking no, I mean, that was also
Right.
kind of part of the beginning journeys for me, as well as like I physically, my body was asking to be paid attention to. I was having
Mhm.
all sorts of stress,
Mhm.
disease, all these ailments were manifesting in my physical body because what was happening to me emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically was out of whack.
Mhm.
And we have to integrate that in somatic experience, and we call it coherence, where everything is aligned, like, and makes
Mhm.
sense. And that is what I found through writing the book, not just writing the book though, but going through therapy and finding all of these structures of support as I was
Mhm.
writing the book, to be able to help me make sense of and accept all and understand all of the things that that happened. And it's really fascinating because on the other side of writing the book, I don't have, well, one, I had PTSD and those symptoms, I don't
Mhm.
have them anymore.
Right.
I had a chronic, like really bad stomach condition that manifested in all sorts of ways with my digestive system gone,
Mhm.
because that gut brain connection,
Right.
through the vagus nerve is real. What is happening here is affecting your gut. What is happening in your gut is affecting your mind.
Yeah.
So it's just been so fascinating. And I wish I could just be like, the book is just about this, but it's like, there's so much.
There's so much in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I so relate to that. I fully believe colon cancer was the effect of my upbringing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it manifests in all different kinds of different ways,
Yeah. And I
and
hope that becomes more of a mainstream conversation,
mhm.
rather than it
I
being separate. Like
hope
this
to
is
feel
an
the same.
isolated incident that has nothing to do with, the things that happened to you. This is something that happened outside of you and came in. But
Yeah.
really, I believe that the things that we're going through in our lives that are also unresolved are creating these diseases.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I fully agree. And not everybody's with us, but I hope eventually that comes around, because
Yeah.
it's that whole mind, body, spirit connection. Because I there was a time I just kind of thought my body was my body, or whatever. I didn't think that it mattered so much. It wasn't until I really started tuning in, like, oh, she's trying
Yeah.
to tell me something here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting closer. I think that is,
I hope so.
maybe more old guard thinking. And I'm hoping that we're like my generation, the millennial generation, they call
Mm-hmm.
us like the therapy generation or the wellness
Right.
generation, because we're all trying to undo what our, boomer parents did to us, because what was
Mm-hmm.
normal for them, they're just passing it on to us. Again, that comes back to that generational trauma piece. But
Absolutely.
I do think that, my generation and a lot of people in the X generation above me,
Mm-hmm.
is it X or Z? X.
Uh,
Gen X.
I
Gen
know
X.
I'm right above you. I'm not,
Yeah. Yes. I don't
so
know.
whatever that is,
Whatever
I
it
don't
is.
know.
Yeah. I think a lot of that generation as well is kind of catching on, like, oh,
Mhm.
there is so much more happening. We are of the body, we can't
Right.
separate. That's why I think so many, like people who've been in CBT, cognitive behavioral
Mhm.
therapy,
Mhm.
for a really
Yep.
long time, it's almost like a lot of these people aren't getting better.
Right.
And because you're just talking around the content of the story, but not actually addressing it holistically, which is like, well, how
Mhm.
is it also playing out in your body?
Right. Oh
You
yeah,
know?
that's such an important factor. Oh my gosh, yes. So we're going to take a little break and then we'll come back and talk more about your book and
Oh,
whatever else comes up.
yeah, exactly.
Real, raw, authentic conversation. Thank you, everyone. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Transformation with Martine, where we overcome everything and compromise nothing. My guest today is Lauren Dollie Duke, and we've been talking about her book, Shithouse. It is a very good book. It's definitely going to make you think about your own life and examining your own life, which is what we've been talking about. So, Lauren, do you mind, like, we haven't really talked about it, but kind of giving us a synopsis of your life, just so readers kind of know that are going to go and purchase your book?
Wow.
I know that's hard. I know.
Well, so I grew up in a little town in Pacifica, California, on a place called Pedro Point. And my family members, my mom, she was a single mom, but then there was kind of men, in and out, a lot of addiction. My father robbed a bank. My stepfather was an alcoholic. Father went to prison for robbing the bank, got out when I was 14 years old, lived in my basement. And that is why the book is called Shithouse, because he called the basement the shithouse. But the interesting thing is about that, like when the first time that I showed him, he came in and he's like, okay, well, show me where I'm going to be sleeping. And my mom had said, he's going to be living downstairs in the basement. Right. And when I brought him down there, it was dark and dingy and cobwebs. And there's this whole scene where we're kind of like, climbing through the dingy, I think I said it was kind of like a dirty mine shaft or something.
Yeah,
where the washing machine and dryer was down there. But he made this comment about like, well, this is such a shit house. And I was like, well, what do you expect? We're shitty people. And he was basically making the comment that like, it's really uncared for and it's, but it's still a part of your house. And if it's a part of your house, you should care for it. And what he was really talking about is that we still need to care for the places that are in the dark. That was like the symbolism. And so that, that ends up kind of being one of the, the threads throughout the entire book is really taking a look at my own shadows and from the time that I'm a little child all the way through, finding the, my way and my own insight through the path of yoga and writing and starting a business and ultimately love. So, it's definitely like a book of hope and resilience. And there's a lot of crazy side stories and, like along the way that I think are heavy and also entertaining. So I think there's at least I attempted to, because when you're writing about such heavy material, like you have to also find the light. And that's a part of the writing process as well. And I worked with a lot of editors to balance out, because it's really easy to remember, the traumatic moments in our life, they take more from us. They take more energy, electricity, hormones. It's called the negativity bias. So it's really easy to remember all the bad things that happen. But in order to kind of balance out the flavor of the book, you also have to integrate in there those light moments. So I hope that translated.
Yeah, I think so. It's like, and a lot, your dad in a lot of ways, I mean, he seemed to have some fun with him. I mean, he wanted adventure for sure. Like the time he brought you and your sister to go buy cars.
Wow. Yeah. So those are my favorite chapters of the entire book. And for me, I think they're the richest. And also, there's so much there because what you start to see through the characters in my story, who are my family members, there's not really any good or bad. And I tried to show the complexity of the characters and kind of, why they did the things they did. So they were more humanized and understandable rather than like, well, he was in prison, so he's a bad person, or he robbed this bank and so he's a bad person. It's more like, it's more complicated and nuanced. And I didn't even get into, the bigger story. My father was adopted into the David Duke family, and David Duke is the leader of the KKK, and that my last name is Duke. So, there was a lot that happened to him that built, what he became. And I could have easily taken all of that on as my own identity. And instead I chose another path, but yeah, like stealing the cars. I mean, and these are the things that are so crazy, because we'll do anything to, when you don't know, you'll do anything to protect your family members. It's like, we kind of knew what was going on in that situation, but at the same time, we didn't want to believe it. Like we were stuck in these two realities. And the one reality was like the reality, like this is shady. And the other reality is like wanting it to be a dream and a fairy tale. And like, we're going to be a happy family. And he is really actually buying us these cars. And for the first time, we're going to have something new and nice, something that we could have never imagined. And we really wanted to hold on to that dream, even though it's J-Day.
Right. And I remember just like at the point where your car gets repossessed from you, I'm like scared for you. In that moment when those guys come, and you knew what was going on. It's like, oh, but she's still a little girl, it's.
Yeah. What's so fascinating is that at that time I was working at the Chart House, and a lot of people that I worked with remembered that, like, now that they're reading the book, they're like, oh my God, I remember that. And during that time, I was so ashamed of that happening publicly and people witnessing that, that I never processed it. I tried to move through it as, oh no, it's fine. It's fine. Do this thing. It's fine. And because I was so ashamed, and of being humiliated like that at such a young, whatever, I was 15 years old. I wasn't even old enough to be driving a car. Again, I was like stuck between these two worlds where I had this car and I was, for the first time, like I was in this, like something nice. I had something nice and it had been gifted to me. And it was something that other people didn't even have. And I felt so special. And then on the other side, it was like, it is so shady that you have this car. This is against the law. It's, my dad ended up pulling the money out of the bank account that he had stolen from someone else after we left the car lot. So anyway, it's just all of it is a really, I think even like, especially that part is really hard for people to wrap their brain around.
Right. Or even you guys like driving and following each other, and then you and your sister, and then your dad goes off somewhere else, but it's like, well, we're going to get this done. We're going to do it. I got to do it. I got to go with it.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. It's like we're, but I also think that's why so many people stay sick, is because they want so desperately for the illusion to be real. And so they don't step into reality. And that was, for me, that was my motivation for writing this book, is like, I needed to step into reality. I needed to process my experience so that way I could get better.
Right.
Because without it, I wasn't going to get better. And it's funny because my sister, sorry, I just had some bubbly water, but my sister and, my publicist, they're like, okay, so what's the big vision? Like, now you have everyone's attention. Like, where do you want to drive them? Like, into your next course, buy your next book. I'm like, I just want to lead people to themselves. This is not about leading people into buying my, next book or paying for my course or being coached by me to write their book. No, this really is about eliminating, like helping people, inspiring people to do their own self-inquiry and self-examination and investigation of, the whole matrix of their life. And in order to better understand themselves and to forgive themselves, and also the people who've played a role in the things that have happened to them. Because what I feel on the other side of this, where I really understand and have organized my reality, my psychology, my past, like, I'm not suffering anymore. And I'm not angry at everyone. And I recognized that our resolutions are inside of ourselves, like our resolutions are our responsibility. And that is what I wish for people, because on the other side of doing all of this work, to feel how light I feel and how much better I feel and how much healthier I feel is what I want for everyone. And everyone deserves it. It's like it's like the original gift that we've been given before we do all of these things to basically torture ourselves.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh.
And especially the forgiveness, piece of our family members, because as long as we're holding on to, all the things like the rage and the resentment and the anger and, whatever it is that we're pissed off about, like all of that is just making us sick.
Right. 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 We are going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk some more about all this good stuff. We'll be right back, everyone. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, to Transformation with Martine, where we overcome everything and compromise nothing. My guest today has been Lauren Dollie Duke, and we have been talking about her book, Shithouse. So, Lauren, before we go into anything else, where can people find you besides finding your book, which I assume is everywhere?
Yeah, so the book is, in all the major retailers. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, Goodreads. And then a lot of independent bookstores are also carrying it, which is awesome because I didn't really know. I went through an independent press, and I didn't, until the book came out, I didn't really know what independent bookstores were picking it up, but it was so cool to Google the book and my name and to see all of these independent bookstores picking it up. So one of the things that people are doing as well is to support local bookstores. They're actually going to the bookstore, and if the bookstore isn't carrying it, they're just asking them to order it. So that's a good way also. That's great for me as well. And it's great for, the independent bookstores. Also, people can find me on my website. It's laurendollyduke.com, and Dolly is spelled IE. Then my Instagram, I'm pretty active on my Instagram, just kind of sharing, like for me, first and foremost, I am an educator, especially around the nervous system. That's kind of like my big work that I've been doing. And I share a lot of, information about the mind, body, spirit connection on my Instagram. And my Instagram is Dollie Duke, DOLLIE Duke 83. So people can find me there as well. Awesome.
That's so good. And I love the fact that people are asking the smaller bookstores to order.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
Me too. And it's a good, it's really a great way to get them to be curious about the book. You know what I mean? Because not every store is just going to pick it up. But if someone comes in and is like, hey, I want to get this book, then they look at it, and that's actually they look at it, they find it interesting, or they really like the cover. And the cover was something very specific. It was a very, my really good friend who's a very well-known artist. Yeah, her name is Daniela Manini, and she's a Peruvian artist, and she actually drew that house. And if you look up close on that house, there's all sorts of little designs. There's eyes, there's a lot of symbolism in that. And, that is, we tried to make it like, we basically tried to like break the house, but at the same time, if you look up close, you'll see that there's like a piece of like grass or a flower, like growing out of the side of the house. So no matter the symbolism there is like, no matter, how dark and dingy and broken things seem on the outside, like there's always life and vitality and humanity below that.
Oh yes, so much yes to that.
Yeah. So that was like, it didn't take us, her and I, she's known me for a very long time, even before I started writing this book, and she knows my family members, and it was really a cool project to do that with her, because we were able, because we know each other so well, we were literally able to like dial the cover out in a very short period of time. And normally publishers don't really let the artist or the writer choose, the the cover of the book, but she was such a well-known artist and she'd already done multiple book covers and multiple illustrations. So it just like worked out perfectly that we were able to do that together.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
we did it in like an hour, but also we had already known each other for like 10 years. So it was like a 10-year process that we were able to distill in an hour because we had we had known each other for a long time.
Yeah, that's super cool. Cause I know when your publicist came to me, I'm like, oh, the book, just the title is what grabbed me. Yeah. Because I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's definitely perfect for my show. I can tell that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's a metaphor too. It's like, no matter what, like we all at some point live in a shit house, and it's just like the cover.
No doubt about it.
No matter what it is like out here or what's going on, there is still so much more below the surface that, is worth looking at. And it's our humanity. So that was kind of that's why I titled the book Shit House. And also it's like, again, for me, there's a lot of symbolism, but I also think it's captivating. And I think the cover art is captivating. I mean, we chose even the matte cover and the way that the paper feels like, it's basically, it's a piece of art like us,
that's nice. Yeah. I really like that. Yeah, that's for sure. So what, I don't know if we have time to touch on it, but something you said, like, I just think it's really important if we touch on just for a minute or so. I know so many of the clients I work, so many of the people that come to me because of the show name and all that, they deal with shame. And you said, like, each time someone pretended I didn't exist, I built another wall of shame. So how did you, besides yoga and I guess diving in, how would you tell someone else to start chipping away at theirs? Like, what would you ask them to do or recommend they do?
Well, I recommend that they do some shame work and actually go through therapy, because it's really a belief system. And, it's something that you learn, and it's a false belief system. And that was, again, that's what one of the bigger things that I was saying in this book, there's a lot of, social constructs, like this is what we have learned about ourselves. And the things that we go through, they build us, but they don't define us. And sometimes what we have to do is we have to work with someone else to get them to help us see that. And so, I was in trauma therapy. I was working with a shame therapist. Like what I had to do is have someone else basically lay out how I ultimately could have made some of the decisions that I made that made me feel unlovable, which is not true. It was a false belief system. And so I basically had to work with someone to dismantle that. But, who we become, we've built. And if we've built it, we can also tear it down. And that was what I saw when I started, doing therapy and a lot of, of my own personal investigation. Like if you live in a house and your house is basically falling down, even these belief systems like shame, it's just, these are toxic basically. But like, if you're living in a house and your house is falling apart, what are you going to do? You're going to go to the foundation. And so when I went to the foundation, and that is like looking at where these belief systems came from, which is my mother, and she got them from her mother, I started to realize like, oh my God, my foundation is basically made out of like oatmeal, it's silly putty basically. And so I realized that pretty much everything I had been taught was a lie. And if that was what was true, then I could rebuild it. I had to tear it all down. If I had learned it, I can unlearn it. And now I have to relearn something new. And that's what it's really all about. That's this work.
Yes. And I don't believe we can do it alone. As I can tell, you don't either. It starts with therapy. And then to me, it's coaching after that. You need both.
It's a lifetime. It's a lifetime of kind of burdening ourselves from these things that we've believed that aren't actually true. It's like you start to realize that your whole reality is a lie. And that was my experience. And that is also another thing that I want people to recognize through, like, that is a big message, for me is like these belief systems, they're not real. They're socially constructed. If they're socially constructed and they've been built by our culture, we can tear them down and rebuild and build something that is, that actually gives us more of a capacity to thrive rather than stay small.
Right. Yeah. Because we're meant to thrive.
Yeah.
We are. It takes us a while to get there, to see that, especially if we've been through things that we have. But we are meant to thrive. And I see that you found that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I know we've only got another minute, but like what is your life like today?
Oh man, I am in a really beautiful marriage, and my husband, I think that was a big piece of my healing journey, was letting someone very different love me, trying something new. This is super out of my comfort zone, and is still not so much now, but we've been together 9 years. And I think because of him and finally having my first safe attachment of my entire life, I really have been able to do a lot of work on myself. Pretty stable. I live like in the country, there's horses around, and I try to just keep my life organized and not chaotic. Create really good conditions for me to thrive physically and mentally, and not continuing to put myself in toxic situations like I did when I was young.
God, yeah, I think that's beautiful. So I wish we could keep talking. I really do, because there's so much more I could say and ask and do and everything. But thank you so much for coming on. And I wish you tremendous success. And I hope that you keep in touch. And maybe I'll meet you up in somewhere in Cali someday.
Oh, hi, or the Moss Beach Distillery, girl.
Oh, hey, that's perfect. I'm going in March, by the way. If you
amazing.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you next week, 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern every Friday. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Transformation with Martine. Did listening today spark a sense of hope and possibility? Hold on to this feeling and tune in every second and fourth Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific for more inspiring conversations with Martine and her guests. They will show you there is hope, and you are right where you need to be. Martine is dedicated to supporting you right where you are, while launching you towards promise, passion, and possibility that leads to the fulfilled life your heart aches for. If you're tired of being stuck, schedule a complimentary consultation with Martine and get on the exciting path towards the life you want to be living. Visit martineemmons.com and make your appointment today.